on gender relations in rural Asia. Numerous articles and 16 books with focus on the political economy of land rights, gender, and energy in Asia. Now, I would like to invite President IRSA, Mr. Vikas Kumar sir, for giving welcome address. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sohangi madam, for giving me this opportunity. So it is a really honor and great privilege for us, for the Indian Research Scholars Association, and also individually for me, that eminent and excellent Professor Govind Kelkar ma'am has accepted our request and given us time. So on behalf of the Indian Research Scholars Association and on behalf of me, I would like to welcome to our respected Professor Govind Kelkar ma'am. So thank you so much ma'am for accepting our request. And the second thing is ma'am has selected a very contemporary and relevant topic. When I have discussed I have sent the topic to Subhangi Amle madam and also to our executive committee members. So they have told me that what is the relation between the gender and energy. But when I have read the two books of the Professor Kelkar madam, which madam has sent to me for the review, so I have understood the something which kinds of the lecture madam will deliver. So thank you so much madam, and I would like to welcome to also the all participants and executive committee members who has taken their valuable time and joined this uh, distinguished lectures. So I hope that when we will listen to Professor Kelkar madam, Professor Gobind madam, then uh, uh, I can I have fully hope that we will increase our knowledge regarding the gender and economy and energy. So I will not take more time because uh, I would like to quote a one quotation of एक हिंदी में कोटेशन मैं कोट करना चाहूँगा कि हीरे के कण को और विद्वान के क्षण को कभी भी बर्बाद नहीं करना चाहिए। सो वही सिचुएशन आज हमारे साथ गोविंद मैम के साथ है। तो हम उनका अधिक समय वी कैन नॉट टेक मोर टाइम, सो हम लोगों को ज़्यादा समय उनको सुनने में स्पेंड करना चाहिए। सो आई वुड लाइक टू रिक्वेस्ट टू Subhangi madam for the further proceeding. Over to you, Subhangi ma'am.
Thank you, Vikas sir. I welcome you, ma'am, to the virtual stage and request you please enlighten us with your words. Over to you, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, Savangi ji, and thank you, Vikas ji, that you really made this task not difficult, but task which I enjoy very much now. What I plan to do that I'll talk for half an hour, and I would increase more kind of listen to you. We are all expert in the making. Huh? There is no age bar, because when somebody stops learning, then we are no longer a kind of full human beings. Forget about scholars. We learn at every stage. Huh? And youth, particularly, I respect tremendous. Have tremendous respect for youth, because they think out of the box. New ideas, new lot of changes are happening, and they are in the middle of that. So I look forward to those questions. Is this okay that I talk for half an hour? Or around half an hour? I mean, I have not kind of thing, and then we can
Something
go into
40 to
question answer
45
session.
minutes, ma'am. Something 40 to 45
Okay,
minutes.
okay, I'll try. So, first of all, greetings on March 8th. although it is 10th today, but this is the week which is called International Women's Day, International Women's Week, because it is March 8th, International Women's Day. And it is that day when the women start talking about their rights, and how then a socialist leader from Germany in 1910 introduced the idea of this day. And there were about 100 women collected from all over the world, only 100. Huh? And it's a big kind of gathering of the socialist people. And they emphasized that women's demand for equality in all political and economic sphere is very, very important. So that was the one thing that was emphasized. And since then, this day, right from the United Nations to the local government to the local organizations, this day has become very important. So I thought that any kind of talk, or either it is gender energy or otherwise, it must have this kind of mention that what was the really important about this? One was that the demand for equality, demand in the political and economic rights, that was important. And she argued for women's employment in all the fields, in science, technology, political, economic spheres. Why this political participation is important? Because it frees women from their economic dependence on men. So the independence of women is also very much part of the energy and development that has to be seen. Now, what has been the dynamics of change in women's energy use in rural India, which we are going to talk about? And they are very much connected with this week also, which is kind of which is important. Let us look at the successful countrywide scheme of the government of rural India. There has been a Ujjwala scheme. I am sure that you all have heard about Ujjwala scheme. If somebody has not heard, please raise the hand, kind of thing. But Ujjwala scheme is very, very rare. What is special about Ujjwala scheme? Ujjwala scheme is that, and how gender and energy are connected. So that I am taking the example of the Ujjwala scheme. Incidentally, energy until 1977, energy has been used only in terms of as models, building modeling. And it was that number of women, scholars, activists from US, from India, who gathered. I was also very much part of it, and who said, what kind of these energy development are there? What kind of this energy structure is being developed without concern for people, without concern for women? That you are building these models as if energy doesn't affect people. So that was an important thing. So that is the dynamism in energy, gender and energy starts that early. Um, Now, India has received a lot of appreciation, the present government, for introducing the Ujjwala scheme, because this is one of the first thing that talks about the clean cooking. Cooking is a very important thing because nobody can live without eating cooked food, no? Whether it is meat or it is vegetarian, but food has to be cooked, and everybody has to, man or woman, everyone, children, everybody has to eat food. And cooking has to done through energy. Now, this can be, the energy is used in two ways. One is the called is solid biomass. That means wood, डंग, गोबर से जो बनता है, उपले कहते हैं, क्या कहते हैं उनको, उनसे, and coal. These are the traditionally used in Asia and Africa in particular, which I have not become very kind of urbanized countries. So or urbanized regions. So about 3 billion people people worldwide use this kind of cooking. And the result, what is the kind of result of this cooking, this kind of cooking? 30% of the ambient pollution comes from cooking. Can you believe that? What happens in that household? And these are the figures that has come from the WHO, that is World Health Organization. So they are not part of one research or two research, but a number of researches that have put together. So what are the gains that probably policy made in this regard? There have been two very important laws during in the last 20 years. I mean, there have been number of laws, but what we are talking here is about two laws that are major laws. One law or policy, not even laws, but policies, two policies. One is the Hindu Succession Amendment Act. According to this act, the women and girls got the succession rights, that they have the same inheritance in the property as a boy and girl would get, whether it is the house, whether it is the equipment, or whether it is the land or forest. So they have whatever the resources the family have, ancestral. Now, of course, it has gone to father's property in the new interpretation of the law, but earlier it was the ancestral property. So like a Hindu boy is born in the family, then it is soon after birth he becomes a co-parsoner. Co-parsoner means that he has the his share is there. He born with his inheritance rights, but this right was not available to girls. Now, after this law, Hindu Succession Amendment Act in 2005, it was amended against the Mitakshara law of so this was against kind of Hindu Mitakshara system, and it was said that girls have as much right, or girls and women have as much right in property and assets, in the parental property or ancestral property, as the boy has. So if the girl is born, she will also get the same right. So that's one thing important to remember, because energy is an asset also. Very much an asset. Second policy is 2016, which is later, which we will talk about in detail. And this is the Ujjwala scheme. It is called a scheme, but it is a country-wide program, and it has been nationally and internationally has been called a successful program. So what is the important feature of this kind of policy that we will discuss about second policy? So this has been the policy change and major gains in terms of how it affects women. Now, what is the situation of women? If you look at the post-COVID situation or the current situation, or even during COVID situation, COVID is not very old, then you find that there is a kind of women's existing condition is the disproportionate job loss for women, particularly since COVID. And during COVID, everybody lost job, but women lost more than men. And in the post-COVID situation, when they were taken in the fields of energy, that our energy-operated machines, women were much less employed than men. It became very evident. Earlier also this was there, but we have the data, आंकड़े जो है हमारे वो post-COVID time के हैं. Second is high violence against women. Now, violence, women, and violence, when we talk of the gender-based violence, or violence against women, domestic violence. But I'm not talking of domestic violence, because the violence against women exists particularly in three areas or in all areas. And violence, it is definitely in domestic space, and it is also in public space, in the streets, in buses. Otherwise, why women would be scared to go out? And we have seen that how many cases go on and kind of thing. And third is the workplace. workspace or workplace or workspace is also very much affected by the molestation of women, by ill treatment, unwelcome touch. And the supervisor say this is how they listen to kind of thing. Otherwise, they don't listen. But what is important is this violence is really like there is a violence on the lower caste, there is violence against ethnic minorities, and there is a high violence within your home and outside your home. So, and this affects your agency and personality. Now, in is there any change in this when the Ujjwala, famous Ujjwala scheme is introduced? The Ujjwala scheme introduced first thing that I investigated 10 research areas in 4 districts of India and 4 districts of Nepal, with a research reach of 700 women and men. And so it is based on that what we are talking today. So what came about was that close to 3 billion people, as I said earlier, cook in Asia and Africa particular, cook using polluting open fires. That was another figure that during just about 2015. These are the figures of the 2015. Open fires. Simple stoves filled with kerosene, biomass, that means wood, animal dung, and crop waste and coal. Why it is, you will say, why it is not, it has been traditionally happening, but traditionally people have been dying also. So worldwide, it came out that worldwide 3.8 million people die prematurely from asthma, from other diseases that affected by this kind of unclean cooking. So that's why the energy is important. And who are the people who die in larger numbers? Women and children in because the mother is cooking and the child is there along with the mother, so gets affected. And they develop weak lungs and they die. So the question was that something has to be done. And this was one good step that government took. So in India, what was about in India, how many people died? WHO estimates, and this has been going on for the last 15 years. So the WHO estimated that 1.2 million deaths in India every year of women and children because of the unclean cooking. So cooking became the kind of a Ujjwala scheme. Cooking with gas became an important thing. Now there is a critique of this, that gas is it may be a clean, but it comes from the kind of, there would be exhaustible resource. Fossil fuel, it is not fossil fuel free, but at least it is, human health is protected, and it is an interim measure before we shift to fully electricity or some other form of clean cooking energy. Now, of course, it is Madhya Pradesh also is known for developing solar cooking, but solar cooking has not yet taken off as much as this kind of done. So, so how and why this Ujjwala scheme was introduced? It was introduced because here you see the connection between gender and energy. Who were the cooks? Who were the people who were affected, dying? And why they were dying? Because of the unclean energy being used, and for a fundamental thing that is being used as a preparation of the food. One of the reasons, what are the perspectives on clean energy? Uh, it is to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, GHG emissions, that indoor air pollution that we talked about, and ambient pollution 30% kind of thing, and death because of that. So the one of the things, that intensity of this pollution has to be reduced. That was the one objective, one perspective developed on why attention was paid to clean cooking. Second was reduce energy intensity in agricultural production. So agriculture is also the main kind of thing, and besides factory, agriculture is the main and where the energy was most used, or GHG, greenhouse gas emissions came, extracting groundwater for purposes of irrigation. That was so how environmentally uh, harmful it was. Huh? And you see that water shortage, how much water shortage is there increasingly become. But agriculture is important. But the question is, and so is the cooking important. But the question is that whether there are 2 points that was said, that either you use only surface water or you use the conjunctive pattern. Surface and groundwater both should be used. In not only groundwater. Third perspective was bio inputs. Mm. So, biofertilizers and other things rather than chemical fertilizers. And who were the people? I mean, I don't know how many of you are students of agriculture or teach agriculture, but if you see that 74%, 74 to 76, there are two figures available. Percent agricultural workforce is by rural women. Hmm? 74 to 76% women in rural agricultural workforce. So this is also women's kind of agriculture is also women's jobs. But why I talked about HSA, Hindu Succession Amendment, despite that law, women are not landowners. So they work in agriculture, but they don't have the right to land. There is a law, but law has been not affected. So these are the social norms that are coming in between. And so, who do you tell to use the groundwater or not to use the kind of groundwater, but use surface water? It is the husband who will decide. So these are the important. But worker is the woman. Because if you own land, then you are the farmer. If you don't own land, then you are not the farmer. So Ujjwala scheme was introduced in 2016. It has earlier attempted, this is the an earlier 2005, I think. I don't remember the exact date. There were attempts were made in Andhra Pradesh and also in Orissa to introduce this kind of policies, but they were statewide and they were not kind of consistently followed, and they were opposed. So scheme was introduced in 2016 with the purpose to empower women, to protect their health, and reduce deaths of women and children. Why, how it was? And it was Ujjwala scheme. I don't know if you have paid attention to this. It is in the cylinder is in the name of the women. Connection is in the name of the women, irrespective of marital status. Whether one is married or not married, if there is an adult woman in the house, the Ujjwala would be in her name. So marriage is not considered. I don't know how many people you are getting shocked, but marriage is the thing that is keeps women dependent on men. Huh? And our leaders go also saying that mata or behno. But when they address men, then they don't don't say uh, 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 pita and putra. भाई कहते हैं कि भाइयों और and all this, but that is a different thing that is has to be seen. Your independent identity as a citizen means that you exist as an individual, as a citizen. This doesn't mean that you don't live in the family. You live in the family, you live in collectivity. It is not question of non-collectivity or non-community. One is not talking, but women are to be treated as the citizens. Now, Ujjwala schemes, without any consideration for the marital relations, this asset was given in the name of the women because they were the users. Of course, the government stopped there. They made the law in 2005 about land ownership by women, but it never implemented kind of thing. And it is the collusion between the family male members of the family or sometimes female members of the family, and um, and the government, that this law is not being pushed so much. It is only about 10% women has got the land, 10 or 12. Official figures are 14% with all after 20 years. So one more fact that needs to be realized, how the civil society works. In 2015, uh, uh, government launched a Give It Up campaign. You were very much there, but you won't remember that in 2015, government introduced a Give It Up campaign. Give it up means that your claim, everybody was getting gas cylinder very cheaply, 315, 300 rupees and 315 rupees a gas cylinder. That was subsidized. But this subsidy, they said, should not be taken by the better of people, those who can eat well, but that money should be kept for the BPL families, below poverty line people. So that money, and in 1 year, in 2015 to 2016, 1 year, 10 million households voluntarily gave up their subsidies. So you look at the civil society's involvement. They were not extra rich people. They were just the kind of middle class people who could afford without living with the without subsidies. Now this money saved with a little bit of funds from the government. These funds were used by the government of India to provide cooking gas connections to poorer households. So while the vision is there, a policy, but funds come from the local civil society. That is important throughout India. So, with the exception of some poor women specific vices, Ujjwala has been a successful scheme. Huh? They had put a kind of, for 3 years, they have put a figure for 80 million connections, but they got this figure much earlier. So this is the first scheme where they said that people are not able to meet targets, but in Ujjwala scheme they met the target. This was distributed very well, and the besides achieving the targets of distribution centers, Indian Oil was one, Hindustan, what is that? Uh, Hindustan Oil? No. So that was another, and there was one more. So these were the three main kind of gas agencies, which are oil companies, which were given the responsibility to implement in the rural area to provide gas cylinders. So importantly, the scheme provides connections to the poor household in the women's name, as we discussed. And the scheme provides connection to the women's household with on cost sharing basis, so that you have the ownership of own. So connection and the first cylinder is given by the government. That was the this thing. And at the same time, connection charges and further connections, further refills, that has to be given by the family concerned. Now, I'm not saying that this is the entire thing is good, but I'm just here relating to it, that how the system works. The amount can be, the government said that amount can be paid with the help of interest-free loan, or this loan can be taken either from relations or from the bank. What are the drivers? So let's say this is the scheme. Now we can take that why this scheme was successful unlike other schemes. And what it does to women, and how do you think that we should judge its progress, or so what are those drivers that have more effect on gender and energy policy? So one is that women as economic agents. Recognition of women as the economic agents, it was first time realized a bit that as economic agents means as producers, income earners, or breadwinners, not dependent on the household. So women were not seen in the attached category. When you give this a small gas connection, it is not so small also, it is cost about 2,000 to 3,000 initially. So it was not really disconnected. So this is the recognition of women as economic agent, as producers. That was the recognized, and that is a good driver in terms of how it's affect energy and gender. Second is, um, there was a male resistance that has to be seen in the sense of wherever the men were quite active. And that is important. I am telling the many men participants here, young people also, that two kind of statements really indicate that. How do you feel? Some, I investigated this thing in Tamil Nadu, in Dindigul district, where the agriculture laborers, women, they have bought the gas connections on from their own money. So I said that, do you think if you lose your job during COVID, would you go back to cooking with gas connect with wood and kerosene? And they are saying we can buy LPG without, we bought LPG with our own money. We will never go back to cooking with wood. Now they have got the that connection, that 50% which what they use, they use their savings from their kind of agricultural wage money, and they said we are not going to go back to use cooking with gas. And I asked them why, what is wrong, because, and they said that, oh, the utensils are very dirty and it is a lot of work. When it rains, then you take time to make a fire and so on and so forth. And it doesn't rain much Dindigal, but nevertheless, this example was given. In Odisha villages, where we investigated the male-headed households, and we interviewed men because we wanted to interview both men and women. And when we asked them that when did you buy LPG and why did you buy LPG, they had, these families also had LPG. And the man said that we LPG is our fourth priority. So what is the first priority? First priority is a television set. Second priority is a motorcycle. Third priority is the electric equipment like bulbs and rods and all this. And fourth priority would be LPG. And I said, oh, why did you buy then LPG? And they said, for hot snacks and tea. In the evening, when we drink in the evening, then we need hot snacks. So that's why it has to be, it takes time to चूल्हा पे करने से टाइम लगता है, इसमें फौरन बन जाता है पकौड़े and other thing. So I just smiled a bit and they said, why do you smile? Don't you drink in the अर्बन एरियाज? सिटी में, दिल्ली में नहीं क्या पीते हैं आप लोग? हम यहाँ पीते हैं तो क्या हार जाए? Anyway, that is a different matter. The question was, it was the last priority. So even the lesson is that independence, economic independence of the women is very, very important. That is where the connections come. If there is a kind of any change in the status of women is to be made. Research shows that when women have an independent source of income and control over finances, 57% in the household, they buy LPG first. This is the Deloitte study that has pointed out. In other houses where men are in charge, or that means heads of the household, only 29% of the cases, they would be buying the LPG as the kind of one of the priority items, or buy at all of the priority items. So this also applies that because of male migration, where men have migrated in terms of and there is a lot of migration that you know that in these areas. And in the male migration also you find that women are running the household on their own, and they also tend to buy LPG. Now, how do you assess the success of the LPG program? Not because of the government has introduced, but because the women adopted that. And who were these women who adopted that and how it influenced that? So what are the dynamics of change in the energy use? How we are doing with the time? Another 5 minutes. So,
No, ma'am.
dynamics.
You can take
I'll
more, ma'am. No.
complete this in
Yes, yes, ma'am. Sure, sure. You
the
can take, ma'am.
Thank you. So, what are the dynamics of change in women's energy use? One is that the increased value of women's time. You have to value of time. Otherwise, what is the traditionally women and men say? Women don't have any. I'm talking of the so-called housewife. I don't like this term, but they say women don't have the any time. खाना बना लिया, उसके बाद बैठी हुई है, कुछ काम ही नहीं है उनको. हाँ, the kisan, the same thing applies to kisan. That is the male farmer. अरे उसको तो 2 बार खेती करना, उसके बाद काम ही नहीं होता. So nobody recognizes. People think the work is only 10 to 5, in which you spend 2 hours drinking tea, lunch, another thing. That is the only work, and that is not the work. How much work is there? So when the value of women's work is recognized, and now this women's value in work in terms of the household work, now the economists are tearing their heads. How to really how to calculate the unpaid care work. It takes so much time because repeatedly the data is coming where women started, where this housework, unpaid, they call it unpaid care work, was recognized, economy has shot up. So how to do this kind of recognize, calculate this work as work? It is not considered work, it is considered as the duty. And second is, so process facilitated by women's and groups, like where the women's groups are there, then also they begin to realize, then the change happens. Like SHG, how much in rural India SHG had made change, self-help groups. That is the Samoom. So that is one driver that is very, very important when you are assessing a policy change, particularly with regard to the energy. Another factor is also concern about women's health. There is a lot of concern, lot of talk about how poor health is there, how many women are dying in childbirth, how many women are anemic. Now, this concern is there, and probably that has some impact. So there was a concern that 1.3 million people dying in India. And these are the UN agencies on which the government has no control. So that's why this attempt was made. So this is a big dynamic factor for change in policy. Technological change such as mechanization of agriculture. If mechanization of agriculture happens, then also there is a change. Who is doing the agriculture? They have to learn. So tractors, sprayers, these things that have been introduced, but who are the people? If the men are migrant, then somebody has to do the agriculture. So women are doing this agriculture, so they have to be really, their position has to be changed. They have to operate these machines, and machines are operated by energy. So this is the third factor in change. ICTs, phone, another form of ICTs, but phone in particular is another important that causes awareness. So they can talk to each other, and they can know about the prices. And these are the rural women, and they are doing wonders. That we don't need graduates, we don't need even high school pass, but we all know that how they are using the phones and how they are doing changes. National response to international concern. When there is an international attack, in India this is happening. Now the government of India is trying its best, for example, to improve its image, because India is known most unsafe country in the world for women. Why we are talk about our great cultures? The question is why this should be unsafe for women. When we protect women from going in the night, we don't protect them from the snakes and leopards and शेर चीता से भेड़िया से नहीं बचाते उनको. Other civilized men, we protect them. Now, this is a very kind of shameful thing that we have to protect our women and they don't have as much freedom as the others have. As the men have, they can also go and they can also go freely, buy things or do things, have tea, whatever it is they want to do, and the young girls feel safer. Then a national response. So that is the international concern. It was that so many women are dying. So this was another driver. So national concern was we have to improve our image because from unclean cooking, India was claiming to be a third world economy and how it can continue where the women and children are dying. Low cost and efficient appliances. Still, it is not very low cost. It was introduced during the election time. We all know the cylinders become cheap and then their prices go up. So even if you introduce something, then if the it is not low cost, people are unaffordable cost, then people can't really have. So result is that even this scheme, which I also call successful, it is it is lagging behind in terms of implementation because people have taken these Ujjwala connections, but they don't have money for the refills. It is quite costly. They need about at least 1.5 cylinder per month for cooking. So it is used only for primary cooking. Sorry, it is not used for primary cooking. It is used only for tea and snacks. So when a guest kind of goes, when I was there, I was also, they made tea on the gas cylinder. And they said, we make tea. So I said, what about cooking was done on a regular chula? So but that means that pollution continues. It has not been taken care of. So these machines and these appliances, they also have to be affordable and they have to be efficient. Increase literacy of women and girls. I saw in Orissa villages, if a woman was high school, she had in two cases she had refused to come after the marriage. She came in the marriage and she found that they were not cooking with that, and she went back and she said, I'm not going till you buy the cylinder. This girl was had applied for teaching job and she was high school. So that is you can see that if they are educated, then they can set their terms of reference. Concerns for human rights for marginalized people. Big talk of the human rights for ourselves. But what about indigenous people, tribes whom we call? What about the so-called low caste people, Dalits and all this, and women? I mean, we have to be talking of, they have the same human rights which we have. Huh? That they are not discriminated against, they are treated in the fair kind of thing, fair wages, decent work conditions, and decent living standards. I'm not talking of affluent living standards, but where they have to basically live with dignity and equality. That is the decent way of living. So tribes, women, they have as much kind, they should live as well as the other men of the household live in any household, whether rich or poor. So these were some of the things that I wanted to share with you, and I wanted more really questions where I have confused you or I have not made clear. You should be free with that, and we can discuss that.
Uh, Thank you so much, ma'am. Uh, you have thrown light on Ujjwala scheme and importance of clean cooking. Further, you have spoken about greenhouse gas, bio imports, women's health, and so on. Thank you so much, ma'am. I request the participants, if you have any questions regarding the today's topic, you are welcome to ask.
And participants, you can ask the question in Hindi, no problem.
Yes, I speak Hindi very well. बोलने में जरा अटपटाती हूँ इसलिए प्रेफर टू टॉक इन इंग्लिश लेकिन समझती भी बहुत अच्छी तरह वो बोलती भी हूँ
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
और निसंकोच बोलिए आप, ये मत सोचो ये कि every question is important. Don't think that this question is not important. Every question is important.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, I think I have one question, ma'am, from my side.
Uh-huh.
As I have read your book, which hunts culture, patriarchy, and structural transformation.
Uh-huh.
It has been published from the Cambridge University. Uh, Really, it is a
Yes.
uh, good book on the field of the cultural study and gender transformation. So, ma'am, when we are reading, we read about the cultural and patriarchy structural transformations. So there are
Mhm.
several interrelation between both cultural
Yeah.
cultural and patriarchy and also in the gender issues. So how can
Mhm.
understand separately what is the culture issues regarding the gender and what is the patriarchy issues related to gender, because when we are read about the uh, tribal in
Mhm.
especially in the Baiga and in the Agaria. So
Mhm.
there are the several culture there. Female are dominating that, एंड उसको मेल जो होते हैं वो एक्सेप्ट करते हैं जो भी उनके रिगार्डिंग जो कल्चर्स होते हैं। तो एक
Uh-huh.
मॉडर्न सोसाइटी और जो एक ट्राइबल सोसाइटी है, चूंकि वहाँ के कल्चर अलग हैं और जो मॉडर्न सोसाइटी है वहाँ पे कल्चर अलग है, दोनों के
Mm.
पैट्रियार्की और कल्चर रिलेशंस को जेंडर के साथ कैसे समझ सकते हैं मैम?
First thing, gender means really relation of power between men and women. Gender does not mean these are the two sexes. Okay. Now, of course, we talk of third sex also, transgender. Now, if you see that gender by misnomer, it is treated as the two genders. That is the actually there are two sexes. Gender means the relation of power and hierarchy between two genders or between three genders: men, women, and transgender. That would be the now the latest situation is. So, gender. How do you relate to gender? The question, and what is the patriarchy? Patriarchy is total male dominance in decision making, in asset control, in in finances, and uh, and these are the in politics that so if you look at parliament, who are the majority of the people, or local assembly, if you look at the घर का बात कर लीजिए, घर में कौन है, घर में आपका घर किसके नाम होता है, बाप के नाम,
मोस्ट ऑफ
बच्चे किसके नाम होते हैं,
मेल।
बाप के नाम। ओके। ब्रेड विनर कौन समझा जाता है, पिता।
फीमेल।
Now everything that it surrounds, and there is a complicity of women also in maintaining patriarchy. Women also, माँ भी यही समझाती है बच्चों को, ठीक से रहो नहीं तो अभी तुम्हारे बाप से कहेंगे और तुम्हें अच्छी सजा देंगे, in most household. So this is the meaning of patriarchy, where women do the work like agriculture. women are 74% women are doing work agriculture, लेकिन हम जब farmer कहते हैं तो दिमाग में क्या आता है कि किसकी इमेज आती है, a man with working in the field. हाँ. This is patriarchy dominating our mind. It dominates the mind of women also, not only men. So there is a whole unlearning process involved. Second is about, so this is the patriarchy in simple definition, when the total kind of control. It is that control, ownership of resources, decision making is with men in the society. In the society, it starts from the household to family to community and to national parliament and international levels also. Now, there are two kinds of societies. That's why where the Baga comes, matrilineal and patrilineal.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure that ki Baga community, I have not studied Baga community, whether it is a matrilineal society.
Yes, ma'am.
Meghalaya pura state है matrilineal. हाँ, where the land and lineage is with the mother, youngest daughter. वहां पर लड़के को नहीं देते हैं, वहां पर लड़की को देते हैं। सबसे छोटी जो लड़की होती है उसकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होती है कि वो अपने माता पिता की देखभाल करे और फैमिली में किसी को क्राइसिस आए जो देखभाल करे, और जमीन भी उसके नाम होगी, बच्चे होंगे वो भी बहनों के नाम से होते हैं, अरे उसके मतलब माँ के नाम से होते हैं। So land and lineage are with the women. That is in matrilineal society. Matriarch लेकिन decision नहीं है. Decision making है वो जैसे यहाँ पंचायत होती है, वहाँ ट्रेडिशनली दरबार कहते हैं उसको, हाँ, और वो और दरबार में अभी भी women नहीं है. So decision making is entirely. So they say this is the patrilineal patriarchal within the matrilineal. I mean, that is what. And of course, there is a movement going on there which says that we as civilized as the rest of India, if decision making comes with the in the hands of men, a lot of men are saying and women are resisting. So Baga community matrilineal है कि patrilineal है, ये मेरी समझ में नहीं आया. अगर वो है वो हमने आपको इसीलिए कंपेंडियम भेजा था कि नॉर्थ ईस्ट में देखिए मेघालय तो है, लेकिन और जो स्टेट्स हैं वहां पर महिलाओं का अधिकार बिल्कुल नहीं है। वो पेट्रीलोकल है, पेट्रियार्कल है। शादी के बाद बेटी जो है वो कहाँ रहने जाती है? हस्बैंड के यहाँ, वो पेट्रीलोकल कहलाता है। सो वेयर द पेट्रीलोकल एंड पेट्रीलिनी लैंड एंड लिनिएज एंड लोकेलिटी इज विद द मेन एंड दे डोमिनेट, दैट इज पेट्रियार्कल। Matrilineal is not matriarchal. Matrilineal is matrilineal. Their land and lineage is the name of the women. So बैगा में ये बात हो सकती है। दूसरी बात यह है कि हमको समझने की जरूरत है, अभी तक वो लोग भी बहुत पीते हैं लेकिन किसी मारपीट नहीं होती है। हमारे यहाँ तो खाना हो जाता है, हो सकता है उसका हो, कुछ मुझे अंदाज नहीं है, लेकिन जाएगा कि कंपेयर टू हिंदू सोसाइटी और मेन स्ट्रीम सोसाइटी, women have more freedom in जंगल में जाती है, सामान लाती है, they are not attacked, रात में भी जाती है इस तरह। the way the Delhi is the civilized, so called is the worst place for women, huh? So the difference that one has to take into account.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Next, anyone?
Yes, Shubhangi.
You have talked on energy consumption by women in the kitchen, consumption in industry context of men.
In the sense of
In the context of men. Yeah, energy consumption.
एनर्जी कंजम्पशन जो काम करते हैं हम की, इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर में भी काम होता है और आदमी भी करते हैं, और वहां पर भी कुछ जो फ्यूल्स निकलते हैं दे आर आल्सो हार्मफुल, but women are also working there. So any kind of harmful practices does not mean, or harmful practices, harmful consumption of the energy affect men. Of course it affects men also. There also decent work condition की जब हम बात करते हैं तो it applies both to men and women. So it is not really that this thing. But what I was talking of the energy violence के मामले में कि supervisors in particular एडवाइजर टू टेक्स्ट, वहां पर मैंने देखा सुपरवाइजर है जो गाली देके आदमियों से बात करते हैं. एंड आई आस्क देम कि व्हाई डू यू हैव दिस काइंड ऑफ गाली. देन दे सेड कि वो यही बात समझते हैं, इसी से काम करते हैं, नहीं तो बैठ जाते हैं. अच्छा, विमेन बिसाइड्स बीइंग गाली, गाली भले ही कुछ कम हो, बट देवर अनवेलकम टचिंग. किसी के कोहनी ये इधर मार दी, किसी के ब्रेस्ट पे हाथ रख दिया, किसी को रात में बुला लिया. These things are kind of happening. So there is a sexual harassment of women in place. That's what I was talking about, the violence against women. So there is a difference. There is a difference between the differential kind of effects, both men and women. It is
Thank
not
you, ma'am.
that men are free kind of thing, but men are more kind of, because they are in privileged position socially and economically, so they become the perpetrator of the violence. That is what the point I'm raising.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
Yes, ma'am.
But
Questions? Nahi, I want to take suggestions from your side. Yes, ma'am. Just in present scenario, मोस्ट ऑफ दी जो गर्ल्स हैं, तो जैसे कि अभी हम लोग यंग यंग हैं, तो दे आर टेकिंग डिसीजंस दैट कि रहेंगे.
sorry, they are taking decisions.
We will
I
not get married.
they will not
तो
get married.
ये शहर में तो मैम ये पॉसिबल हो. they take decision कि हम लोग yes ma'am they will not get married. मैम ये सिटी में और विशेष करके जो मेट्रो सिटीज हैं यहाँ पर तो पॉसिबल हो रहा है. बट द मोस्ट ऑफ दी जो फीमेल्स हैं, जो गर्ल्स हैं, विशेष करके रूरल एरियाज में, तो जैसे कि उनसे कोई पूछता भी नहीं कि यू वांट टू गेट मैरिज, वेयर यू वांट टू गेट मैरिज, एंड दे विल डिसाइड वन पर्सन. एक केवल एक पर्सन को डिसाइड करते हैं कि ये आपका हस्बैंड होगा और हम क्या करेंगे कि इनसे आपकी शादी करेंगे. वो उनके उसके विषय उसके इच्छा के
पूछ ही नहीं जाता. हाँ, उनके इच्छा के विरुद्ध हो जाता
है, या वो चाह रहे हैं, नहीं चाह रहे हैं. सो हाउ इट विल पॉसिबल इन द रूरल एरियाज फर्स्ट, कि शहर में तो ये पॉसिबल हो पा रहा है. द मोस्ट ऑफ द गर्ल्स आर टेकिंग डिसीजन दैट वी विल गेट द लव मैरिज, जो हम लोग इस प्रेजेंट सिनेरियो में कहते हैं कि एक दूसरे को जान करके देख सुन करके करेंगे. लेकिन रूरल, यस मैम, रूरल एरियाज में ये पूछा नहीं जाता. यस मैम, यस. और यदि कोई सिंगल रहना चाहता है तो वो तो विलेज में पॉसिबल ही नहीं. तो ये मैडम विलेज में ये कैसे पॉसिबल हो पाएगा?
देखिए, चाइना में जब चेंज आया, वहां का एग्जांपल है. तो सबसे पहले जब चाइना रेवोल्यूशनरी चाइना जब फ्रीडम हुई, तो वहां सबसे दो कानून बने.
मेरी वॉइस इज नॉट कमिंग.
आपकी आवाज हमें सुनाई नहीं पड़ रही थी. आप सुनने में प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है?
Yes, ma'am. Your voice is clear.
I think Vikas Kumar is not able to hear. Vikas, are you able to hear me?
No, ma'am. आपकी your voice is clear. I can listen you, ma'am, properly. Yes.
अच्छा, okay. So China में 1950 में, soon after they became.
Yes, ma'am. I'm able to hear you. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So दो कानून बने. एक तो बना एग्रेरियन लॉ. एग्रेरियन लॉ में, और दोनों एक साथ बने. एग्रेरियन लॉ में ये था कि महिला और पुरुष का बराबर अधिकार होगा जमीन पर, और सेपरेट, जॉइंट नहीं. जैसे दो भाइयों का अधिकार होता है ना, फादर की प्रॉपर्टी जब होती है तो दो भाइयों को मिलता है, लेकिन वो ज्वाइंट नहीं, सेपरेट होता है ना, आधी आधी प्रॉपर्टी हो जाती है या 1/4 हो जाती, डिपेंडिंग ऑन द नंबर ऑफ द ब्रदर्स। इसी तरह महिला और पुरुष का होगा। ये एग्रेरियन लॉ का था कि अपने जो पिता की जमीन है उसमें उसका आधा अधिकार होगा। इट डिपेंड्स ऑन हर वेदर शी वांट्स टू गेट मैरिड और नॉट मैरिड, व्हाट डज शी डू विथ लैंड, दैट इज द arranged marriages. They didn't call it love marriage. And the second, वहां पे तो totally control करते थे, जैसे यहाँ गांव में करते, उससे भी ज्यादा। जो माँ बाप थे वो कंट्रोल करते थे। 4-5 साल की लड़की हुई तो उसको कहीं पे क्या कह दिया कि इसकी शादी उससे होगी। सो पेरेंट्स क्या रहती भी थी 9-10 साल तक, और उसकी शादी जो है वो उसी लड़के से होती थी। शी हैड नो चॉइस। सो द क्वेश्चन इज कि जैसे जैसे ये शिक्षा बढ़ेगी और ये बाहर का एक्सपोजर होगा, तो उसमें तो नए विचार आएंगे, और नए विचार आएंगे तो वही करेंगे, चाहे रूरल एरियाज में हो या अर्बन एरियाज। कुछ विरोध हो, कुछ चुपचाप करेंगे। ये तो चेंज होता, चेंज की हर चीज चेंज में ये होता है। मैं खुद आती हूँ गांव से, मैं गांव की स्थिति से बहुत विकसित हूँ। मेरे जब मैं पढ़ रही थी तो मेरे गांव में ना सड़क थी, ना मैंने लालटेन से पढ़ाई की है, न बिजली थी। तो क्वेश्चन है कि नए जो विचार आते हैं वो बदलते रहते हैं। आफ्टर ऑल द पेरेंट्स एक्सेप्टेड things that I wanted to do. So things are that parents have to accept. Parents mean people with traditional ideas have to accept the new realities. आपके बच्चे होंगे उससे भी ज्यादा एडवांस होंगे।